My name is Sophia Walker. I'm 41 years old, and I currently live in a quiet suburb north of Sacramento, California. My home, a three-bedroom ranch-style house at the end of Laurel Oak Lane, is the result of over a decade of hard work in the high-end residential interior design industry. I thought I had built a stable, peaceful life and a real home with my husband, Ethan Walker, the man I believed would be my lifelong partner. But everything began to unravel on an otherwise ordinary Tuesday morning. I was about to make coffee when the phone rang. It was an unfamiliar number from Monterey Credit Union. A woman's voice came through, professional but tense. Mrs. Walker, I'm calling to confirm some information regarding your home equity loan at 2157 Laurel Oak Lane. Have there been any unusual activities connected to a $410,000 zero-cent transaction recently? I froze. I didn't apply for any loan, I replied, my voice dropping with each thump of my heartbeat. Something's not right here. Can you please confirm? This isn't your signature, she continued. The loan was approved and disbursed nearly a month ago. According to our records, both signatures are present, yours and your husband's. I nearly dropped the phone. My legs started to tremble. $410,000? 0 cents? This house, where Ethan and I spent 7 years restoring every brick, every walnut window frame, wasn't just my biggest asset. It was the heart, the soul of my life. I never signed anything related to that loan, I said firmly. I want to see every single document. Now, if you suspect forgery, I strongly suggest coming to the nearest branch as soon as possible, she advised. Bring your ID and any related documents. This needs to be handled urgently. I hung up, my heart pounding in my chest like a war drum. Ethan was at the office. He works as a project development director at a construction firm based in downtown Sacramento. I had always believed he understood the value of this house and everything I sacrificed to build it. I pulled open the file drawer, flipping through every contract and old mortgage record. Nothing seemed out of place. I grabbed my keys, skipped the makeup, rushed out the door, and drove straight to the Midtown branch. The file manager, a middle-aged man named Mr. Keller, greeted me with a look of unease. He placed a thick file in front of me. I turned the pages one by one until I saw the signature bearing my name. But a closer look made my stomach turn. The swirl on the S was too tight. The curve at the end of my last name was unnaturally long. It looked close, but it wasn't mine. This is not my signature, I stated, locking eyes with Keller. Someone forged it. He nodded slowly. According to our system, the person who submitted the documents was Mr. Ethan Walker. He mentioned you were busy with a project in San Jose and couldn't come. Also, the verification phone number listed is not yours. And you still approved it? I nearly shouted. A forged signature, a strange phone number, and you still disbursed $410,000? Keller stammered. He's been a long-time client. We made a verification call, but didn't see any red flags. You got played. I cut him off, my lips starting to go dry. And now I'm at risk of losing my home because of blind trust. I stood up abruptly, grabbed the file copies, and stormed out. Waves of shock rolled over me like an undertow. I didn't know what hurt more, being betrayed or realizing the man who once promised to protect me had turned our home into a tool for a scheme I couldn't even fully comprehend yet. And my gut told me this was only the beginning. Something far worse was still hidden. I got home a little after 3 p.m., still reeling from the meeting at the bank. I could barely remember how I drove back, only that my hands trembled as I turned the key in the lock, as if the house itself no longer belonged to me. The house was eerily silent. No soft background radio like I usually played all day. No oven timer Ethan often forgot to turn off. Everything was still, tidy, like a beautiful shell hiding something that had long since rotted inside. I walked straight into the small home office at the end of the hallway, the room where we kept the shared desktop used to manage household finances. Ethan usually stored everything here. Budget spreadsheets, project blueprints, even the car maintenance calendar. But today, the first thing I saw on the screen wasn't an Excel file or a project doc. It was an open email window he hadn't closed. He'd forgotten to log off. The subject line read, "Closing confirmation, Friday, 10 a.m. The sender was a Gmail address, not in our contacts, but the name beside it made my heart seize. Chloe Hartman. Chloe. A name I didn't recognize, but it had popped up 3 times just this week in his inbox. I clicked on the most recent message. The contents were short and shameless. The condo is absolutely perfect. I can't believe you made this happen so fast. Friday it is, and I'll bring the wine. Attached was a PDF titled escrow_confirmation_Pacific Heights P. Bell. I opened it. A real estate purchase agreement. $399,000, 0 cents for a unit on the 12th floor of a new high-rise in Pacific Heights, one of San Francisco's most expensive neighborhoods. Buyer, Chloe Hartman. Escrow Company, Golden West Escrow, LLC. I collapsed into the chair. My scalp went numb. My breath grew shallow. Almost $400,000, 0 cents. Nearly identical to the loan Ethan had forged my signature to obtain. And now it was being used to buy a luxury condo for some woman I'd never heard of. Ethan had never once mentioned anyone named Chloe. Not a single time. But the way she wrote, the tone, the flirty enthusiasm, it was obvious this wasn't a typical real estate transaction. I pulled out my phone, hands still shaking, and took pictures of everything. The email, the attachment, the recent browser history. There were dozens of searches. 1-bedroom city view, condo, discrete real estate deals not under both names, how to purchase property under someone else's name. Ethan wasn't just cheating on me. He was building a new life, and I wasn't part of it. When I left the office, I barely felt the floor beneath my heels. I needed answers. I needed confrontation. But reason screamed inside me, don't act until you have everything. If Ethan was bold enough to forge bank documents, he'd be shameless enough to talk his way out of anything. Unless I had irrefutable proof. I went to the bedroom and pulled out my personal laptop, the one I only used for design projects. Ethan rarely touched it. While it booted up, I opened the Notes app on my phone and typed something insane. What if I disappear? Just to test my own reaction. But my fingers drifted to the camera app instead. And for the first time in my life, I recorded each room in my house like I was a stranger documenting a future crime scene. Every flower vase, every picture frame, every tiny decorative item I had picked with love suddenly felt like they were mocking me. Then came the new email notification. Sender, Ethan Walker. Subject, this weekend. Message, cabins booked in Tahoe, no service, super quiet. Just the way you like it. Leaving early Saturday. We need this. I read it again and again. The cabin in Tahoe. The same one we stayed in for my birthday last year. A place with no neighbors, no phone reception. No cameras, no evidence. A chill swept through me, sharper than any I'd felt before. Was Ethan just having an affair? Or was there something far darker in motion? I reopened the old note and added one more line. If I disappear in Tahoe, don't believe it was an accident. I saved the file to a private drive and emailed a copy to a backup address Ethan didn't know existed. There was no more time to collapse. The game had started, and this time, I wasn't going to lose. That evening, I sat alone in the dining room, the warm amber glow spilling over the oak table Ethan and I had spent 3 weeks sanding and sealing by hand. I poured myself a glass of white wine, but didn't drink it. The pale liquid swirled in the glass like a fading memory, no longer grounded in reality. I began stitching the pieces together, those scattered details I had once unconsciously dismissed or deliberately ignored. Ethan used to leave his phone everywhere, on the kitchen counter, by the bed, even forgotten in the garage, but lately, he always kept it in his pocket. One day, I picked it up to answer a call while he was in the shower, and the screen flashed, Face ID not recognized. Not because I was using the wrong face, but because he'd changed the security settings. I still remember that Friday afternoon. I picked up the phone out of habit, and just that simple gesture made Ethan step out of the bathroom with a look I didn't recognize. No yelling, no accusations, just eyes that had gone cold, metallic. "You shouldn't be handling my phone unless it's urgent," he said calmly, almost too calmly. "We need to respect each other's space." I nodded, forcing a smile. But now I realize, when did space in a marriage become a wall to hide behind? I remembered another moment, about 2 months ago. Ethan said he needed to handle his own finances because his company required him to separate income for year-end tax filings. He asked me to stop transferring money from our joint account into his personal one, said it would help with tracking. I agreed, because I trusted him. But from that moment on, I lost visibility over our finances. The bills were still paid, but something beneath the surface had shifted. Like a bridge misaligned at its foundation, starting to tilt without notice. And then there was the necklace. I had given it to him for our 10th anniversary. A titanium chain with a small blue stone he wore every day, until one day it vanished. When I asked, he shrugged and said, "Must have left it somewhere." But just yesterday, in the real estate photo Chloe sent in her email, I saw him wearing it, standing beside her, his arm wrapped around her waist as if there had never been a wife named Sophia. There is one thing I've never told anyone. We had tried to have children for 3 years. When I turned 39, the doctor said natural chances were slim. We began IVF, needles, hormones, and ultrasound rooms filled with silence, where no heartbeat was found. Ethan was there every time I walked out of the clinic with tears on my cheeks. He held me in the car, gently squeezed my shoulder, said, "We'll try again." But after the third failed attempt, he started disappearing more often. Doctor appointments became solo visits. He claimed work trips, client meetings, tight deadlines. One time, I called him while waiting for an injection, and he answered with, "I'm in a meeting, babe. Can we talk later?" That was the only time I cried while holding the syringe. Now I understand. Ethan wasn't just tired of failure. He had let go of me. Quietly, with pretense, with lies. Instead of telling me the truth, he built a script that played out for a year, full of empty reassurances, mechanical hugs, and weekend plans that never happened. I lifted the wine glass to my lips, then set it down. I couldn't swallow a drop. From the window, a flicker of headlights flashed down the street. Someone just parked. I stood and peeked through the curtain. It was Ethan. He came home earlier than usual. Each step from the car to the front door was steady, no rush, no hesitation, as if nothing was wrong, as if he'd just come from the gym or the office, not from the arms of a woman sheltering stolen loan money. I could confront him tonight. I could throw it all in his face, emails, evidence, the necklace. But a voice inside whispered, "Not yet. Not until you're sure." I needed to know more. Who Chloe really was, whether that condo was where he planned to start over, and if anyone else was involved in this web of deception. I stood in the dark, phone clutched tightly, its memory full of screenshots. Ethan walked through the door, hung his coat like he always did, then turned and kissed me softly on the forehead. I smiled, and buried the storm still raging behind my eyes. The next morning, I returned to the Monterey Credit Union branch, this time carrying my personal documents, driver's license, and a thick folder of printed emails from the night before. I asked to see Mr. Keller again, the loan officer responsible for the account tied to my home. "Mrs. Walker," he greeted, consciously, when he saw me walk in. "I reviewed the file. It appears you truly had no knowledge of this loan." I didn't respond. I simply placed a copy of my authentic signature next to the loan documents approved 3 weeks ago. Side by side, they looked similar, but heartbreakingly different. The forged one had the look of someone mimicking it from memory. The angle was wrong. The loop at the end of the S, my signature flourish since high school, was completely off. "I never signed these papers," I said, my tone steady but firm as stone. "That is a forged signature." Mr. Keller swallowed hard. "I understand. We'll forward this file to the Fraud Investigation Unit, but I must inform you, the funds were already fully disbursed on April 14th to an escrow company named Golden West Escrow LLC. I nodded. I'd seen that name the night before in Chloe's email. I need to know where the money was sent, I said. This is unauthorized use of personal information. I'm willing to sign a formal affidavit to cooperate with your investigation. After several minutes searching the system, Mr. Keller handed me a printed copy of the wire transfer confirmation. $410,000, 0 cents had been wired to Golden West Escrow for the purchase of real estate. Buyer, Chloe Hartman. Property address, Unit 1203, Lexington View Building, San Francisco. My heart pounded, but I kept my face calm. I took the copy and left the bank, into a light spring drizzle, no umbrella. I didn't feel cold, only heat, surging through me. The moment I got home, before I even took my shoes off, my phone buzzed. A message from Ethan Walker. He came by this morning to see the place. Smiled the whole time. You wouldn't believe how happy I am. I froze. That message clearly wasn't meant for me. I stared at it for a long moment. Then, almost mechanically, I typed a reply. What were you talking about? Did you mean to send this to me, Ethan? 15 seconds later, another buzz. Sorry, wrong person. I meant, the client at the project today was all smiles, just wanted to share it with you. A flimsy excuse. No name, no real apology, just an awkward backpedal into vague professionalism. I didn't reply. Instead, I took a screenshot of the message. Then I printed copies of the email, the loan documents, and the wire confirmation from the bank. I placed everything neatly into a black folder. Not for confrontation just yet, but for preparation. Ethan came home around 6:30 p.m. The same familiar smile, gray jacket slung over his shoulder, leather shoes polished to a gleam. He kissed my cheek and said, I brought sushi. You in the mood for tempura rolls? I smiled. Sure, thanks. We had dinner like a picture-perfect couple. He shared a few stories from work. I nodded along. There were moments he looked at me longer than usual, as if trying to read something in my face. But I gave him nothing. No anger, no accusation. My voice stayed calm, light. When he washed the dishes, I glanced at his phone, which lit up on the table, unlocked. Reflex took over. I tilted my head slightly. A message from Chloe, just the preview was visible. I'll bring the champagne you love tomorrow. The sofa's being delivered at 10 a.m. I turned away, pretending I hadn't seen anything. But inside, my heart was dead still, calm like the air before a hurricane. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay silently beside a man who had made plans for a new life, with someone else, under the very roof we once called ours. I counted his breaths, listened to the wind tapping the window panes. And I knew, starting tomorrow, I wouldn't wait for the truth to show itself. I would bring it to light. Ethan was fast asleep beside me, his breathing steady like a man with nothing to hide. But I knew better. This calm was just a glossy coat of paint covering a door that had already rotted from the inside out. I grabbed my phone and scrolled back to the message he had accidentally sent. My heart still pounded at the memory of that faint glow on his screen the night before. The preview from Chloe, sharp as a blade against my throat. But now, one misplaced text wasn't enough. I needed something undeniable. Quietly, barefoot, I slipped out of bed. Ethan's laptop was still on the kitchen counter, like always. He brought it home nightly, claiming he had documents to finish for work. The password? I knew it. The name of our old dog. Benson 1984. I never imagined a man who could fake a marriage would still cling to a shared memory for protection. I powered it on, studying my breath, typing the keys like I was opening a door straight into his mind. In the recent search history, I found terms like no self-service cabins near Lake Almanor, remote hiking trails in Plumas County, unregistered prepaid satellite phone. A chill crept down my spine. But I didn't stop there. In the deleted but cached section, more searches surfaced. High-dose natural sleep aids. How to knock someone out without leaving marks. Fall from cliff, accident, fatality probability, life insurance payout in accidental death? And finally, does life insurance pay if wife dies hiking? I backed away from the keyboard, my hands trembling, legs barely supporting me. My mind went blank. I couldn't even register where I was standing. Ethan had planned for me to disappear, not because the love was gone, not just because there was another woman, but because I was the last barrier between him and a clean slate. Free of joint assets, fraud liability, and the $1,200,000 0 cents life insurance policy I had signed 2 years ago when my company required it for senior staff. Part of me wanted to scream. Another voice whispered, "Not yet." I captured every screen, search history, insurance policy details, even emails, and sent it all to a personal email I'd had since college. One Ethan didn't know existed. Then I logged out, shut down the laptop, and wiped the keyboard. I returned to bed. Ethan hadn't moved. The world, to him, was still intact. At first light, I texted my former attorney, Angela Perez, the one who helped me through a lawsuit against a fraudulent client back in 2019. I wrote, "Urgent. Need private meeting this morning. Related to marriage, finances, and possibly personal safety. Please call office line at 9 a.m. Do not reply by text." Then I started organizing files, the forged loan documents, Chloe's emails, the accidental text, property records under Chloe's name, and now, proof of a murder plan. Ethan walked into the kitchen as I was brewing coffee. "Up early?" he asked, tone suspiciously soft. I turned and smiled as if everything was fine. Just couldn't sleep. Thought I'd start packing for the weekend trip early. His eyes lit up in a way I hadn't seen in months. I'm excited too. Just the two of us, nature, no cell service, no work. Finally some time to reconnect. Reconnect. The word landed like a line from a bad play, but I nodded anyway. "I know," I said, my voice smooth as silk. "I'm looking forward to it." He leaned over, kissed my cheek, and left the room. I stood frozen, clutching the warm mug like it was a live grenade, with the pin barely hanging in place. I would go to that cabin, but I wouldn't be going alone. And this time, no one was going to push me over the edge, whether with their hands, their lies, or a plan dressed in old promises. Attorney Angela Perez welcomed me into her small office on the second floor of a red brick building in downtown Sacramento. She wore a crisp white blouse, her hair pinned up, and the calm in her eyes was the first thing that made me feel steadier after so many sleepless nights. "I need to separate my finances from Ethan immediately," I said, placing a thick folder on her desk. "I have proof of forgery, bank fraud, and possibly a murder plot." Angela flipped through the documents, pausing at a printed page of Ethan's search history. Her brows furrowed. "Do you have the originals of these files?" "I've backed them up to 2 hard drives and uploaded a copy to my private cloud. Every screenshot is time-stamped and recorded on my home security system. I've thought through the possibility that things could get deleted or accidentally lost." Angela nodded, then pulled out a legal separation petition. "We'll file this today to freeze all shared assets. I'll request a temporary order prohibiting any transfer or withdrawal from major accounts, and will include the forged documentation in the record. What do you need from the house?" "Work files, personal documents, essentials, and..." I paused. "A few keepsakes that belong to my mother. I can leave everything else behind." Angela studied me for a moment, then jotted something in her notebook. "I know a private investigator. If you want Ethan followed, I can make the call. But for now, I recommend going back to the house only when he's not home. Do you have someone you trust who can go with you?" I nodded. "My cousin Naomi, in Rancho Cordova. She used to be a reserve officer." That afternoon, I drove to meet Naomi. After I told her everything, her face went pale, then hardened with resolve. "You're not going through this alone. We'll get in while he's out." That night, I texted Ethan. "I want to make peace before our trip. Meet me at our old cafe, 4 p.m. tomorrow." His response came almost instantly. "Glad you reached out. I'll be there, 4 o'clock, Sweetwater Cafe. The next day, at exactly 3:45 p.m., Naomi and I parked 3 blocks from the house. We waited until we saw Ethan pull his slate-colored BMW out of the garage and drive off before approaching. Naomi unlocked the door with the spare key I'd kept hidden. We both wore gloves, moving swiftly like a trained response team. I headed straight for the home office downstairs, grabbed the hard drive, my business contracts, tax records, and my mother's birth certificate. Naomi stood watch, constantly checking the time. "We've got 20 minutes, she said. "I'm watching the street cams. He's not turning back yet." Just as I stepped out of the bedroom, the front door slammed open. Naomi and I froze. I heard a woman's voice first, sharp and slightly high-pitched. "Why'd you leave your phone? I've been calling." Then Ethan's laugh. "I was rushing. You got me flustered." I whispered, "Back door. Now." We bolted to the kitchen, but just as my hand touched the rear door latch, Ethan appeared in the hallway, phone still in hand. He stopped dead, eyes flickering from confusion to defense in a split second. "What are you doing, Sophia?" I turned, arms wrapped tightly around the folder. "I'm taking back what belongs to me and making sure you don't erase anything else." Chloe stepped in behind him, eyes wide. "Who is she?" Naomi stepped forward, pulling a reserve ID badge from her wallet. "I'm family, and if either of you takes one more step, I'll call the police for unlawful entry." "Unlawful?" Ethan scoffed. "This is my house." "No," I replied, pulling the separation order from my jacket. "The court has acknowledged the filing. You are not permitted to interfere with any person or property in this house until a ruling is made. And trust me, I have enough evidence to turn your weekend into a courtroom disaster." Ethan paled. Chloe looked at him, then at me. "What is she talking about, Ethan?" I stepped forward. "You managed to forge my signature, to take out a loan, use that money to buy a condo for you, in your name, to avoid taxes. And, oh right, he also researched how to make my death look like a hiking accident." No one spoke. Then, from the street outside, the sound of a police siren echoed, distant but unmistakable, a cold bell of reality. I gripped the folder tighter. The rules had changed, and this time, I was holding the deck. The air in the room had thickened. Ethan stood frozen, his eyes glinting with fury. Chloe looked between us, confused and shaken, the expression of someone just realizing she might have been nothing more than a pawn in a much larger game. I reached into my bag and pulled out my phone, ready to call my lawyer, but at that very moment my phone buzzed. A message from Ethan's number flashed across the screen. "She won't suspect a thing. Everything's in place for the weekend." My throat tightened. I slowly turned the screen toward him, my gaze unwavering. "You sent that to me by mistake, Ethan." His face went pale, then quickly tried to recover with a weak smirk. "That was for a project? Chloe's helping me organize a presentation for the firm." "Oh? At Lake Tahoe?" I asked, my voice slicing clean like a blade through cloth. "A place with no cell service, no witnesses, no cameras?" He said nothing. I stepped forward, unlocked my phone, tapped a few times, and held it out to Chloe. "Did you know he's been researching how to knock someone out without leaving a trace? About life insurance payouts in the event of hiking accidents? About cabins rented under someone else's name so they can't be traced?" Chloe took a step back, lips trembling. "Ethan, what is she talking about?" He glared at me. "You're making this up." I let out a cold laugh. "If I'm making it up, then what are the browser history screenshots from your laptop? What's this mistaken text? And—" I pulled a document from Naomi's folder. "What about this signed legal separation, filed and stamped by the court? You no longer have the right to stand here and issue orders." Right then, police sirens echoed down the street. Naomi glanced out the window and gave me a small nod. I alerted them ahead of time, just in case. Ethan spun toward the door. A uniformed officer stepped inside moments later after a firm but polite knock. "Mrs. Walker?" she asked, her eyes scanning the room. "That's me. We received a request for safety support during the retrieval of personal belongings under a high-conflict situation. Has there been a problem?" I handed her a copy of the separation order and the temporary protection notice prohibiting Ethan from approaching me during the ongoing investigation. She read through it, then turned to him. Sir, under this emergency protection order, I'm going to have to ask you to vacate the residence until the court reaches a formal decision. Ethan let out a bitter laugh, though the confidence had drained from his eyes. This is my house. She can't kick me out. The officer stayed perfectly calm. You can explain that to the court. But for now, staying here would put you at risk of violating a civil protection order. So the choice is yours. Leave on your own or leave in cuffs. Naomi moved closer, gently placing a hand on my shoulder as if to stop me from saying anything more. I didn't need to. Everything was already clear, exposed. Ethan looked at me one last time before turning away, walking toward the door in silence, his face crumbling under the weight of a blow he never saw coming. One wrong text, sent to the wrong person, had unraveled months of manipulation. Chloe made a move to follow him, but stopped halfway, eyes full of fear and doubt. I didn't know if she had pieced everything together yet, but one thing was certain. From this moment forward, she would never feel safe beside that man again. As the door shut behind him, I exhaled. For the first time since stepping foot in the house, Naomi sat down and handed me a glass of water. You did it, she whispered. I looked around at the home, messy, tense, and temporarily emptied. But to me, it was a beginning. From this wreckage, I would rebuild. Not out of vengeance, but to save myself. 4 months after Ethan was forced to leave the house I once believed would be our forever home, my life had changed completely. No drama, no noise, just a quiet dismantling, layer by layer, revealing the hollow core I had long refused to face. The police concluded their investigation after 6 weeks and found sufficient evidence to charge Ethan with 3 felonies: signature forgery, financial fraud, and intentional misappropriation of shared property. Using my identity to take out a $410,000 0 cents home equity loan was a state-level crime. Combined with the search history on his laptop, queries about insurance payouts and accidental death scenarios, the district attorney left nothing out. Ethan was immediately suspended from his job as a project director at a prominent construction firm. A week later, they sent a formal termination notice, citing severe ethical violations and reputational damage to the company. His bank accounts were frozen, and the condo registered under Chloe's name was seized due to links with the fraudulent funds. And the most unexpected twist? Chloe turned witness. She hadn't contacted me after that dramatic confrontation at the house, but 2 weeks later, my lawyer Angela told me Chloe had voluntarily handed over all her messages, screenshots, and even an audio recording where Ethan admitted things would be so much easier if Sophia just disappeared. Once the dusk began to settle, I returned to the house, not to mourn, but to rebuild. Not just with materials, but with resolve. I replaced the entire security system, installed motion lights around the yard, removed every old photo, yes, even the wedding ones, and hung up my own artwork and memories, with my mother instead. I tore out the old kitchen where Ethan had once sat night after night, pretending to balance budgets while secretly planning a double life, and turned it into a home design studio, where I now meet clients by appointment. This house was no longer a silent witness to my pain. It had become my survival statement. My business thrived in ways I never expected. After being featured in Sacramento Modern Living under the segment Women Reclaiming Their Space, I received over 30 new design requests in just 2 weeks. Clients came not just for my style, but because they saw something real in me, a woman who stood up after being buried beneath what most would have considered irreparable. I kept the oak dining table, the one that had seen a marriage break and also cradled my plans to expose Ethan. Today, its surface is covered in soft white paint, and the legs are hand-carved with a lotus symbol, the emblem of rebirth. One afternoon, while dusting the bookshelf, I found an old note Ethan had written during our first year together. "I'm proud of you for dreaming big." I read it without pain, without anger, then folded it quietly and burned it beneath a candle. The dream I live now no longer needs anyone else to authorize it. Occasionally, I still hear from acquaintances that Ethan is staying at his parents' home in Fresno, waiting for his upcoming hearing. Some people shake their heads, say, such a shame things ended this way. But I don't see it as tragic. It's the natural consequence for someone who gambled with another person's trust for personal gain. I don't need a perfect life. I just need one that isn't held hostage by lies disguised as love. On a quiet weekend morning, I brewed a pot of chamomile tea and pulled back the curtains to let sunlight flood the living room. Hanging on the wall was a painting I created the night Ethan was taken away by police. A woman standing in a scorched forest, holding a glowing blueprint in her hands. I titled it Blueprint After the Fire, because in the end I redesigned my life. Solid, intentional, and this time, no one will ever tear it down again. Sophia's story is a powerful reminder that misplaced trust can become the most dangerous trap. But it's in the moments of deepest betrayal that we often discover our true strength. Sophia didn't just expose the person who deceived her. She rebuilt her life with courage, clarity, and unwavering determination. In the real world, anyone can find themselves caught in a toxic relationship, but the real question is, do we have the strength to walk away, to start over, and to live a life that's truly our own? What do you think about Sophia's journey? What would you do if you found yourself in the same situation? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to follow the channel for more powerful, real-life stories about family, resilience, and finding your way back to yourself.